Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. When I bought my late uncle's mountain cabin, I thought I was escaping the chaos. No rules, no neighbors, no HOA, just peace. But then came the knock at the gate, and with it, a war I never asked for against an empire built on lies, forged maps, and a woman named Karen. When I first saw the property, it felt like stepping into a forgotten world. A two-story mountain home tucked between aspen and pine, wrapped in silence that only the highlands of Utah can offer. It had been my uncle's place, Uncle Ray, who built the thing with his own damn hands back in the early 90s, before smart homes and HOA Karens ruled suburbia like petty monarchs. He'd passed last year, cancer. Left behind this chunk of paradise, untouched by committees, bylaws, or bored housewives looking for control. After a short but heated negotiation with some family who wanted to just sell it and be done, I bought it myself. I live in Colorado normally, been a licensed property appraiser for over 15 years. I know land, I know boundaries, and I know legal descriptions better than most attorneys. So when I pulled the parcel info from the Wasatch County Recorder's Office and saw the lot was unencumbered by any homeowners association, I smiled like a wolf at a sheep auction. No HOA. That was all I needed to know. The house needed work. That was obvious, but the bones were strong. Thick logs, old wiring, well water, and a driveway that had more potholes than pavement. I immediately hired a crew to help bring the place back to life. Electricians, contractors, a guy named Keith who could fix literally anything as long as you fed him coffee and left him alone. We rewired the house, resealed the windows, installed a smart home system I could monitor from my phone, and, most importantly, installed a security camera network covering every damn inch of the property, including the entry gate at the bottom of the private road. By week 3, the place was starting to feel like mine. I even let myself exhale one night sitting on the deck, a glass of 4 roses in hand, watching the sunset disappear into the trees. I'd made it. I'd beat the system. No HOA, no monthly meetings, no letters about my grass being a quarter inch too long. I was king of this mountain, and I wasn't planning on being overthrown. That was before the knock at the gate. It was a Monday morning, week 4 after closing, and I was reviewing inspection reports on my tablet when I heard the alert chime. Motion detected at the gate. I tapped the live feed. 3 people stood on the other side of the wrought iron entrance. 2 men in reflective vests, and 1 woman with a clipboard and a white blouse that screamed overcompensating for lack of authority. They were all wearing badges, not police, not county, but something private. The woman stepped closer to the camera and stared into it like she was daring me to blink first. Her badge read, HOA Pine Meadow Vista, Property Standards Officer. Below that, Karen Mello. I admit, I laughed. I actually laughed out loud. I buzzed the intercom. "Can I help you?" I said, keeping my voice professional but dry. She leaned toward the mic and replied like she was talking to a disobedient teen. "Mr. Bradwood, we've left you multiple notifications. You have not responded. This is our final compliance visit. We are requesting immediate access to perform an exterior and interior inspection of the property per community regulations." I paused for half a second to be sure I heard her right. "I think you're confused," I said. "This property is not within Pine Meadow Vista. It's outside your HOA boundary. I pulled the records myself before I bought it." She didn't blink. "The revised territorial map includes this lot. You are subject to the HOA's bylaws and inspection schedule." "No, I'm not," I said calmly. "The county shows no encumbrance. I've got the documents. And unless you've got a warrant, you're not coming through that gate." She stiffened, her smile tightening into something colder. "Failure to comply will be treated as refusal of inspection," she said, flipping a page on her clipboard with all the drama of a courtroom judge. "Per Section 8 of our standards, continued non-compliance will initiate the eviction process. As of this moment, you're considered out of compliance and subject to removal." "Eviction," I repeated. "Lady, I own this house. I'm not renting from you. You have no jurisdiction here." She didn't answer. She just handed a printed notice to one of the vest-wearing men and gestured for him to attach it to the gate. He zip-tied it to the bars like it was an official citation. It had a Pine Meadow Vista logo and the words "Final Non-Compliance Warning, Eviction Pending." I had to bite my tongue. Every part of me wanted to rip it off and set it on fire in front of them. But I knew better. Let the cameras record everything. "Have a good day," I said, and cut the intercom. They didn't leave right away. Karen stood at the gate for another 2 minutes, probably hoping I'd change my mind and come crawling out. Eventually, they walked back to their SUV and drove off, slow and smug. That night, I poured myself another drink and reviewed the footage frame by frame. I saved the video, took photos of the notice, and forwarded everything to my attorney in Denver. I knew this wasn't over, not by a long shot. If these people thought I'd just roll over, they picked the wrong damn mountain. I didn't sleep much after that first encounter. Something about the way Karen stared into the gate camera stayed with me. Not the usual nosy neighbor irritation I'd seen 1,000 times in my job, but a colder confidence. The kind of confidence you only get when you think the rules don't apply to you. Or worse, when you think you can rewrite them. 2 days later, a thick envelope arrived in my mailbox. No return address, just an HOA seal stamped right over the flap like they were trying to cosplay a government agency. Inside was a pile of papers, an official protocol of eviction, a final notice of non-compliance, and a map, an actual printed map with fresh ink, where my property was shaded in the same pale blue as the Pine Meadow Vista development. Except my parcel wasn't supposed to be anywhere near that blue blob. Their northern boundary had always ended almost half a mile south of my driveway. Now, according to this cheerful little fantasy map, my home was suddenly nestled right inside their community like it had been born there. I called my attorney, Dan O'Malley, and read the heading out loud. Territorial Expansion Plan with Voluntary Annexation Agreement. He asked me to send scans. 2 minutes after receiving them, he called back, laughing so hard I thought he might choke. Voluntary, he said between breaths. Your uncle would sooner swallow a rattlesnake whole than sign a voluntary annexation. I agreed. The man didn't join anything. He didn't even join Thanksgiving unless you bribed him with pecan pie. There was no chance he signed that paper. Dan told me to pull every archived document from the county recorder. So I drove into town the next morning, walked into the quiet beige building, and asked the clerk for every scrap of public record attached to my parcel number. She printed the entire archive, old photos from the 90s, the original deed, water permits, the building inspection from 28 years ago. Everything was neat, consistent, untouched. And then I asked the question that froze the clerk's polite smile. Do you have anything showing this parcel was ever part of Pine Meadow Vista HOA? Any annexation filings? No, she said immediately. Then she hesitated, glanced toward a back office, and lowered her voice. At least, not until recently. That was a hell of a thing to hear. She excused herself, walked away, and came back 5 minutes later with a different folder. When she laid it on the counter, I recognized the same bogus map I'd received in the mail, except this version had a county registrar's stamp on it. A new date, just 2 months old, filed quietly with no prior notice to any affected landowners. There was an electronic signature from someone in the recorder's office, a person I didn't recognize, and a digital checkbox labeled Notification Sent. I asked to see what notification they supposedly sent. The clerk clicked through the system. Her eyebrows shot up. The address they have on file for the previous owner, it's not your uncle's address, she said. This is a P.O. box registered in another county. A P.O. box? Of course. It was subtle. It was calculated. It was the kind of maneuver someone pulls when they know most people won't look too closely. I thanked her, took photos of everything, and stepped outside to call Dan again. Before I could dial, my phone buzzed with a call from a number I didn't recognize. A man's voice came through the speaker, nervous and quick. You're Ray's nephew, right? The new owner? Yes, I said slowly. Who is this? Name's Blair, he said. Used to own the lot south of you. Listen, I don't know what's going on with your land, but you should know you're not the first one they've tried this with. That grabbed my attention fast. He told me his land had been quietly listed as pending annexation last year, except unlike me, he lived out of state and only found out when Karen's people tried to fine him for leaving a shed unpainted. He fought it, got the county to reverse the annexation, then sold the land just to avoid the headache. The kicker? The buyer was a company called Vista Enclave Holdings. I'd never heard the name before, but something about it felt rotten in my mouth. Do you know who owns that company? I asked. Blair chuckled bitterly. Yeah, some guy named Travis Mello. Last name ring any bells? Because it sure as hell rang for me. And there it was. Karen's Web. Not just an HOA fever dream, a coordinated land grab operating under the guise of a shell company. Acquire the adjoining lots, redraw the boundaries, fold everyone in like chickens into a coop, and start collecting dues. I thanked Blair and hung up. My hands were steady, but only because I was too angry to shake. I spent the rest of the afternoon digging deeper. Vista Enclave Holdings had no website, no office address except for some shared workspace in Delaware, and a registration agent that handled thousands of anonymous LLCs. The company had only one listed officer, Travis Mello. Property transfers to the LLC had been filed at lightning speed, one every few months. Always small adjacent parcels, always from owners who later said they'd never even heard of the HOA's plans. I returned home as the sun was setting, the mountains shifting from gold to deep blue. Walking through the house, past the new wiring and freshly sealed windows, I felt something I hadn't felt since that first day: intrusion. My sanctuary wasn't just being threatened, someone was trying to absorb it like a parasite. I poured myself a drink, sat down at the kitchen table, and spread out all the documents. The fake map, the annexation claim, the corporate filings of Vista Enclave Holdings, the original county archive, my uncle's handwritten notes from decades ago. They'd tried to pull me into their fabricated empire, and they expected me to swallow it. They thought I'd shrug, say, "Oh well," and start paying dues. They had no idea who they were dealing with. And if Karen thought filing a fake map would scare me, I couldn't wait to see her face when she realized I wasn't intimidated. I was preparing for war. Friday morning started out quiet. Too quiet in retrospect. I'd driven down into Heber City early to pick up some smart locks and a shipment of grounded cable that didn't make it into last week's order. The contractors were off-site that day. Keith had a wedding to attend, and the drywall guys were finishing up a project 2 towns over. I figured I had a few hours of peace to run errands, maybe grab a burger, and get back to tinkering with the surveillance hub. By noon, I was parked outside the hardware store, trying to decide between 2 brands of circuit interrupters when my phone lit up like a Christmas tree. 5 rapid alerts from the camera system: motion detected, front gate, east perimeter, main porch, garage bay. Then the worst one: access breach, exterior lock override detected. I pulled up the live feed and nearly dropped my phone. 6 people were on my property. 2 wore those familiar HOA vests. 1 carried a clipboard. And there she was, front and center, Karen Mello herself, in heels, sunglasses, and a smug expression I could see clear as day, even through a 1080p video stream. They'd come in a white HOA-marked panel van and a dark green contractor truck. The front gate was hanging open, the lock visibly cut. I watched them march across my gravel path like they owned it. The clipboard guy snapping photos, 2 others dragging folding tables from the van like they were preparing for a bake sale instead of an illegal seizure. And then, the real kicker, I saw them at the front door. One of them walked up to my brand new smart keypad panel, plugged in a USB stick, and ran what looked like a factory override sequence. My jaw clenched so tight I thought I'd chip a molar. They were breaking into my home. No warning, no warrant. Just a bunch of suburban vigilantes cosplaying as a lawful authority. I floored it out of the parking lot, running 2 red lights on my way to the highway. My hands were shaking, but my mind was clear. I was recording every second, screen capturing the feed, and talking to Siri to timestamp the events verbally as I drove. 38 minutes later, tires screeching on gravel, I pulled into my own damn driveway to find my property looking like a crime scene. The front door was propped open. A folding table sat near the entrance with a laminated sign reading "Notice Property Declared Vacant. Pending Community Board Review." My living room furniture, the new sofa I'd had delivered last week, the vintage armchair from my uncle's study, was piled on the front porch like someone had staged a moving sale. And my lights, off. Router, dead. They'd cut power at the breaker and yanked my fiber connection from the utility box. Karen was on the porch, barking orders like a mall cop on meth. When she saw me pull in, her smile faltered for just a second. Then it snapped back into place, wide and fake as ever. "Mr. Bradwood," she called, as if I were late for a meeting. "You're trespassing. This property has been secured for community review." "You broke in," I said, voice low but tight. "You vandalized private property, destroyed my equipment, and now you're squatting on land that doesn't belong to you." She held up a stack of papers like they were a badge. "This parcel is now under HOA jurisdiction per revised integration protocol. We're well within our rights to—" "Bullshit," I snapped. "That protocol isn't worth the toner it was printed with." I dialed 911 in front of her. "Yes, I'm reporting an active home invasion. Multiple individuals on private property without consent. broken locks, disabled security systems, furniture removed. I have video evidence. Real time. Karen's face twitched. Not panic. Not yet. But that smug confidence cracked a little when I said home invasion. She tried to push past me to the truck. I stepped in front of her. You're not going anywhere until the sheriff gets here. Don't touch me, she hissed, suddenly going full soap opera. You just assaulted me. That's on camera. Great, I said. So is your tech overriding my front door lock and your crew cutting my gate. We can play it all back together. The cops arrived faster than I expected. 3 cruisers. First, 2 officers stepped out looking slightly annoyed, probably expecting some backwoods neighbor dispute. But when they saw the severed gate lock and the mess on the porch, their posture changed fast. Karen shoved her stack of papers at one of them. We have jurisdiction, she declared. This property has been voluntarily annexed. It's subject to community enforcement protocol. He is non-compliant. The senior deputy, a guy with tired eyes and a buzz cut, turned to me. Sir, do you have proof of ownership? I handed over my title deed, recent tax bill, and a printed map from the county's database showing the property outside the HOA boundary. I also had a flash drive with the footage of their break-in, which I handed over without a word. Karen was still talking, trying to drown me out. He forged that map. It's outdated. The updated version has this parcel. The deputy held up a hand. Ma'am, stop talking. She did. Barely. He radioed dispatch, verified the documents, and spent 5 minutes watching the video footage on his cruiser's laptop. By the time he stepped back out, he looked a lot less neutral. Everyone here, not named Bradwood, needs to vacate this property now, he said flatly. You're on private land with no legal authority to be here. If you don't leave, you'll be detained for trespassing and property damage. Karen's face turned pale. She opened her mouth to argue, then slammed it shut. The clipboard guy muttered something about just following orders and shuffled off the porch. The others followed. Karen glared at me as she passed, her jaw tight enough to crack a tooth. This isn't over, she hissed. I smiled just a little. You're right, it's just getting started. They drove off in silence, leaving behind a hacked door, a broken gate, and a smoking crater where their credibility used to be. The cops filed an incident report. I filed a claim for damage. Then I walked back inside my home, closed the door behind me, and bolted it the old-fashioned way, with an iron latch and a 12-gauge shotgun just inside the coat closet. The first thing I did after the break-in was triple the cameras. I bought 4 more outdoor units with thermal tracking and a license plate reader for the main road. If Karen or her goons so much as sneezed near my property again, I'd have it recorded in 4K with facial recognition and time-stamped like an FBI sting. But I knew cameras alone wouldn't stop her. The woman had tried to forcibly seize my house under the false flag of HOA jurisdiction. That wasn't a misunderstanding. That was attempted theft. And if she was bold enough to send a squad to my front door once, she'd try again. Only next time, it would be with lawyers, paper filings, and more revised maps that probably came from a bootleg copy of Photoshop. So I called Dan. Dan O'Malley was more than just my attorney. He was the legal equivalent of a junkyard dog with a briefcase. He didn't like HOA bullies. When I told him about the break-in, he filed a civil complaint for trespassing, destruction of property, and interference with electronic infrastructure. Then he followed it up with a formal inquiry to the county zoning board requesting a full review of Pine Meadow Vista's territorial filings. While Dan did his thing, I got to work on mine. See, Karen liked control, but she also liked watching. I'd already caught her creeping near the edge of my tree line in her Lexus, pretending to birdwatch while holding binoculars backward. So I decided to give her something worth watching. I drafted a fake development plan. It looked legit. Stamped headers, county logos, a site proposal titled Bradwood Guest House Initiative Phase 1. It proposed a 2-story guest house with a small observation deck and a drone landing pad, all placed right along the border with the HOA. The final touch. A note about the structure being designed for public visibility and hosting short-term rentals. I left a copy of the plans deliberately visible on my truck's passenger seat, then parked it at the edge of my property, where Karen always liked to do. Her slow rolls. Sure enough, the next afternoon, I spotted her car idling 50 yards away. Her window was down. Her phone was out. I made sure the folder was open just enough for the logo to peek out. The bait was taken within 24 hours. The very next day, I received a cease and desist letter from Pine Meadow Vista's legal team, accusing me of violating community building codes, disturbing the aesthetic harmony of shared view corridors, and, my personal favorite, conducting construction with hostile intent. That last one was so good I almost framed it. I forwarded the letter to Dan and asked him to hold off on responding. Then I posted the fake plans online in a private real estate forum with a caption, "If your HOA reacts this fast to a rumor, imagine what they're hiding." 2 days later, I got an anonymous email from someone calling themselves JR. It contained 3 PDFs, minutes from HOA board meetings over the past 6 months, including one that mentioned ongoing informal annexation strategy. In it, Karen had proposed the cooperative acquisition of undeveloped parcels along the buffer zone to secure visual continuity and revenue stability. Translation: buy land through a shell company, redraw maps, and rope in properties like mine by adjusted adjacency. I tracked the email to an encrypted Proton mail address. My guess? Somebody inside the HOA was getting cold feet. Meanwhile, Dan uncovered something even nastier. Vista Enclave Holdings, the fake company Karen had used to surround my property, had filed a document listing an internal land merger request with the registrar's office. The form was marked as approved, but it had no public record trail. No meeting, no vote, just a rubber stamp from one registrar, a guy named Vernon Haynes. Dan pulled Vernon's financial records. Turns out old Vernon had received a series of payments over the past year from a landscaping firm registered to Karen's brother-in-law. Nothing illegal on the surface, but the timeline lined up too well. Money in, fake approvals out. Dan called in a favor from a contact at the county ethics board. By the end of the week, Vernon was under investigation for possible misconduct, and a subpoena was being drafted for all Pine Meadow Vista zoning expansions since 2021. And still, Karen hadn't made her next move. Not publicly. Not yet. That's when I decided to twist the knife. I printed the cease and desist letter I got from her lawyers. I stapled it to a bulletin board just outside my fence, beneath a laminated sign that read, "Private property not subject to HO. Plans for Community Welcome Center coming soon." I included a QR code that led to a dummy site with stock images of golf carts, tiki bars, and a hot tub labeled Neighborhood Integration Spa. 2 days later, a drone showed up above my yard. It hovered for a full 2 minutes, slowly circling my roof like a metal vulture, but I'd installed jammers the week before. The drone lost signal, dipped mid-air, and crash-landed in my gravel driveway. I put it in a box, marked it Returned to HOA Spy Division, and left it at the front gate. If Karen wanted war, I'd give her one. But I'd do it my way. On paper, in court, and with just enough mockery to make her question which one of us was actually losing their mind. It started with trash. Not a lot at first. A few beer cans, a fast food bag tossed just inside the fence line. I figured it was teenagers, maybe bored locals who didn't like the keep out signs. But by the 3rd day in a row, when someone lobbed a busted lawn chair over my gate and smeared ketchup packets all over the keypad, I knew it wasn't random. Then came the graffiti. Bright red spray paint scrawled across my newly sealed garage door, "HOA scum out," which was ironic because I wasn't even in the goddamn HOA. And then, the fire. It was a Friday night, just after 10. I was sitting inside with the security monitors up, sipping whiskey and watching an old western when the thermal camera on the east side pinged. I tapped the feed and froze. 2 figures in dark hoodies, maybe teens by their size, creeping through the woods toward the outer fence. One carried what looked like a canister. The other had a lighter. I hit the alarm remotely. Floodlights snapped on across the yard, and a siren screeched to life like a banshee in heat. The 2 figures bolted, but not before the taller one managed to toss something over the fence. It hit the ground, rolled once, and burst into flames. I sprinted outside with a fire extinguisher and had the blaze out in under a minute. A scorched patch of dry leaves and a half-melted plastic jug that reeked of gasoline. The only thing left unburned was the rag stuffed in its mouth. A goddamn Molotov cocktail. The police arrived 20 minutes later. We reviewed the footage together. One of the kids had made the rookie mistake of not covering his face fully. The hood slipped when he turned, and the camera caught the side of his face under the motion lights. Even better, he was wearing a school baseball hoodie, local high school. Easy ID. Within 48 hours, officers paid a visit to his parents. The kid cracked fast, said it was just a prank. that he and a buddy were paid to make it look like anti-HOA protesters were attacking the property. Paid. Not dared. Not joked. Paid. When pressed, he said they got a couple $100 each and some fast food delivered by a woman named Cindy, a volunteer for the Pine Meadow Vista HOA, according to the kid. Cindy, as it turned out, was Karen's personal assistant. Her name was on at least 6 public HOA newsletters, always as the community outreach liaison, which I was now realizing probably meant designated deniable fall guy. I called Dan and sent him the police report and the kid's signed statement. He laughed so hard I had to repeat half of it again. "This is it," he said. "This isn't just HOA bullying anymore. This is criminal conspiracy, arson, fraud, coercion of a minor. Jesus, they just gave us the golden ticket." But I wasn't done. I'd already suspected Karen was trying to bait me, paint me as some sort of paranoid lunatic, a volatile guy not fit for the neighborhood. But now she was playing with fire, literally. She wanted the court of public opinion to see me as unstable, angry, maybe even dangerous. Fine, let's go to court. We added the arson attempt to the active civil case and filed a motion to bring HOA members under deposition. Dan also reached out to the county prosecutor, flagging the use of minors in a criminal act and the financial trail of Vista Enclave Holdings, Karen's shell company. Meanwhile, I posted an open letter on my website, now officially dubbed HOWatchdog.org, detailing the fire, the attempted cover-up, and the identity of the perpetrators, minors anonymized, of course. The story spread fast. Within 3 days, I was getting calls from local reporters, HOA reform activists, even a podcast host out of Austin who specialized in domestic tyranny under the guise of community management. Apparently, that's a genre now. But the real gut punch came from inside. A woman named Denise, mid-40s quiet voice, former treasurer of Pine Meadow Vista, sent me an encrypted message. She said she had proof that this wasn't the first time Karen had staged incidents to fabricate external threats against the HOA. That she'd orchestrated 3 other events over the past 2 years, missing signage, fence damage, even an assault that turned out to be her own nephew pretending to be attacked during a meeting. And she was willing to go on record. Suddenly, this wasn't just my story. Karen's whole empire was starting to shake. Her web of control, her fake maps, her illegal raids, her ghost company, her damn Molotov-tossing teenagers, it was all unraveling. But I knew better than to relax. Because people like Karen, they don't go down easy. They flail, they double down, they claw at anything nearby. Reputation, systems, people, trying to drag them down with them. I just had to stay one step ahead. And I had a feeling her next move would be her biggest mistake yet. If there was one thing Karen didn't anticipate, it was how damn thorough I could be when I smelled blood in the water. While she was busy staging sabotage with teenagers and pushing her pathetic vacancy narrative, I was digging through every filing Pine Meadow Vista had submitted in the past 2 years. Zoning requests, meeting minutes, financial disclosures. And through it all, one pattern kept emerging. Karen Mello's fingerprints were everywhere, and not in the way a legitimate officer of a homeowners association ought to be involved. By now, Dan had officially filed 3 actions. A civil suit against the HOA for unlawful entry, destruction of private property, and emotional distress. A complaint to the County Land Commission alleging fraudulent annexation and map manipulation. A request for preliminary injunction to prevent any further HOA activity near or related to my parcel, citing evidence of harassment and organized interference. But the big move, that came when we petitioned the county zoning office to release every HOA expansion request from the past 24 months, including any approved parcel reassignments. We didn't just want to prove they tried to swallow my land. We wanted to show it was a coordinated scheme, and boy did we. Thanks to the anonymous tip from Denise and a subpoena issued for HOA board communications, Dan got access to the private minutes of 2 previously informal meetings. Buried in the pages of droning procedural crap was a single line that made my blood run cold, and then boil, motion passed. Proceed with batch filing of pre-cleared properties using template consent letters. Logistics to be handled via Vista. Enclave Holdings with map updates submitted under Property Integration Plan 4C. Template. Consent. Letters. They didn't just fake mine. They'd been faking everyone's. At least 4 other properties had been annexed under the same process. Two of the owners didn't even live in the state anymore. One of them had been dead for 6 years. Dan cross-referenced signatures and came back grinning like the goddamn Joker. Every one of the voluntary inclusion documents had the same digital artifact pattern in the signature, a copy-paste imprint, not even an AI-generated signature, just a duplicated PNG. And the kicker, they were all notarized by the same guy, a notary named Russell Trainer, who, upon a little investigation, turned out to be Karen's cousin and whose license had expired 18 months ago. I sent that little nugget to the state notary board with a gift basket. Around this time, Karen stopped responding to public inquiries. No more press releases. No more passive-aggressive HOA flyers tucked under people's windshield wipers. Her silence was loud, so I made some noise of my own. I coordinated with Denise and the two other affected landowners. One of them, a retired Army vet named Frank, was not the type of man you screw over with forged signatures. We organized a joint statement, released to the local press and sent to the county recorder's office, outlining the systematic abuse of zoning law by Pine Meadow Vista and demanding a full audit. And then the nail in the coffin landed. Financial records from the county planning department, obtained under FOIA, revealed a series of bank transfers from Vista Enclave Holdings to a planning consultant named Gregory Tolles, the same man who signed off on the modified maps that included my parcel. Turns out, Gregory received monthly consulting fees that just so happened to align with every HOA expansion on record. Coincidence? Not even close. Dan forwarded everything to the district attorney. Within 72 hours, the DA's office confirmed they were opening a formal criminal investigation into Karen Mello, Vista Enclave Holdings, and multiple individuals within the HOA. Charges being explored: forgery, fraud, abuse of public office, and attempted unlawful acquisition of private property. Meanwhile, I posted a full timeline on HOA Watchdog. Interactive, documented, bulletproof. It went viral. Law blogs picked it up. A local news station ran a segment titled "Hijacked by HOA: How One Man Stopped a Suburban Land Grab." The HOA tried to put out a statement, but with half their board now under investigation, it came off less like damage control and more like a guilty whimper. My phone didn't stop buzzing for a week. Former Pine Meadow Vista members started coming forward with their own stories. A guy named Ellis said he'd been fined $400 for a non-compliant mailbox, despite never agreeing to HOA inclusion. A widow down the street claimed she was pressured into signing over her lot during a so-called safety inspection. Karen hadn't built a neighborhood. She'd built an empire, one fraudulent signature at a time. But now, it was crumbling. The investigation moved fast. Faster than even I expected. The county's own reputation was on the line. They had a registrar under suspicion, a notary committing crimes, and a paper trail that looked like a monopoly board soaked in gasoline. The next HOA meeting was scheduled for mid-April, and Dan had a little surprise in store. I almost didn't go to the HOA meeting. Not because I wasn't invited, of course I wasn't, but because Dan said we could just let the system finish what it had already started. But I wanted to see it. I wanted to stand there and watch the whole rotten foundation crack in real time. The annual HOA general meeting was held in the Pine Meadow Vista Community Center, a beige box of a building with Estered 2001 engraved above the double doors, like they were founding fathers of gated America. Normally, attendance hovered around 20 board residents, and Karen holding court like a powdered monarch. This time, the place was full. Word had gotten out. I didn't walk in alone. Dan was beside me in a tailored suit, briefcase in one hand, a smirk that could slice drywall. Behind us came Denise, Frank, and the widow, 3 residents whose properties had been pulled into Karen's fake empire like prisoners of war. 2 local reporters hovered near the back wall, notepads ready. The mood was electric, anticipatory, like everyone was waiting for the magician's hand to be caught in the trick. Karen stood at the front, flanked by her executive officers. Her usual polish was cracked, foundation heavy, voice tighter than usual. She was in the middle of a speech about expanding security measures and updating the integrity of our community lines when the double doors swung open again. 2 men in plain clothes stepped inside. Federal marshals. The room stilled. Karen kept speaking. One of the marshals held up a folded piece of paper and said her name once, calm and clear. Karen Mello. She froze mid-sentence like a statue struck by lightning. You're under arrest for criminal forgery, conspiracy to commit real estate fraud, abuse of notarial process, filing false public documents, and unlawful attempted possession of private property. The words echoed. One of the residents actually gasped. I swear someone dropped a coffee cup. Karen tried to speak, tried to pivot. This is a mistake. I have every right. You don't, Dan said, stepping forward. Not anymore. They cuffed her right there in front of the podium. One of the officers had to help her down the steps. She was shaking. Her hair was too perfect, sprayed stiff, but her legs looked like they were made of jelly. The crowd didn't clap, didn't cheer. It was dead silent. The kind of silence that only exists when a lie finally breaks under its own weight. They walked her past us, eyes down. I didn't speak, didn't smile, just looked her in the eye for half a second. She looked away first. After she was gone, someone from the county DA's office, a clean-cut guy named Grayson with eyes like he ironed them in the morning, stepped up to the podium. He explained politely but with steel behind every word that the HOA's leadership was under investigation, that the entity itself may be subject to forced dissolution, and that a temporary administrative board was being formed by court order to manage the winding down of operations. That part caused murmurs. He clarified further. All annexations performed in the last 2 years were being revoked, pending formal review. That included mine. That included every stolen lot. Someone behind me whispered, "Finally." Dan turned to me and whispered, "Watch this." He handed a folder to Grayson, who nodded and addressed the crowd. Additionally, we've received verified documentation from multiple affected property owners, including evidence of altered parcel maps, payments routed through Vista Enclave Holdings, and misuse of zoning authority. The state has opened a secondary investigation into fraudulent land acquisitions under corporate shell identities. There it was, the shell company exposed, the payments tracked, the scam blown wide open. Grayson ended with this. If you have been coerced, misled, or pressured into agreeing to HOA jurisdiction, we ask that you come forward. You will not be penalized. You will be protected. It was over. Not just for Karen, but for the whole damned empire she built. The marshals didn't stop with her. In the following days, Russell Traynor, the fake notary and expired license holder, was also arrested. Gregory Tolles, the planning consultant who'd sold his pen for HOA dollars, was subpoenaed. The HOA's treasurer resigned. 3 other board members stepped down under pressure. By the end of the month, Pine Meadow Vista HOA filed a motion to dissolve itself, voluntarily, which meant they saw what was coming and wanted to get out before it got worse. Didn't work. The court still ordered a full audit of their finances, and restitution claims began piling up like Christmas cards with lawsuits inside. Dan tallied up my damages, equipment, legal fees, loss of use, and filed for $265,000 in civil restitution. We expected a fight. We didn't get one. They settled. Full amount. No appeal. Sometimes silence means surrender. The first thing I did after the settlement cleared was replace every screw, lock, and circuit board in the house. Not because I had to. Everything had been repaired weeks earlier, but because I wanted to. I wanted to touch every wall again, reassert my presence, make it crystal clear that this house, this land, this silence, it was mine. No more flyers tucked under windshield wipers. No more bogus letters. No more HOA inspectors strolling up my driveway like they own the deed. Just whined in the trees, my smart system humming quietly in the background, and the sound of a man finally left the hell alone. The sign I posted on the new gate said everything. Not an HOA member, access only by court order, around-the-clock surveillance, legal counsel on standby. Simple, firm, no negotiation. But this wasn't just about winning. Somewhere along the line, something shifted. What started as a personal nightmare, one insane HOA trying to absorb me like I was some unclaimed asset, became something bigger. HOA Watchdog, the site I launched half as a joke, now had over 10,000 subscribers. Attorneys started contacting me. Former HOA victims sent in their stories. A senator's staffer even reached out asking for a briefing. Apparently, forced annexation attempts weren't unique to my case, just rarely caught so publicly, so completely. So I leaned into it. I added a new section, HOA Hall of Shame, listing verified stories of overreach, abuse, and shady practices, all with documentation. I started writing guides, how to check if your parcel's been stealthily annexed, how to challenge a fake covenant, how to fight back without losing your mind. One story in particular gutted me. A single mom in Nevada who lost access to her own driveway because the HOA reclassified the easement. Another from Florida, where a group of retirees were fined for putting hurricane shutters on their homes. During hurricane season, people weren't just angry, they were trapped. And worse, isolated. These organizations thrived on silence, on homeowners who didn't know their rights or didn't have the money to fight back. But now they had a blueprint. I spoke at a legal conference 6 months later. Dan came too. Hell, he even wore a tie. We presented the case not as a freak event, but as a warning that property law, if left unmonitored, could be weaponized. That quiet corruption could rewrite borders, one fake map at a time. Karen Mello, meanwhile, had accepted a plea deal. 3.5 years in prison plus mandatory restitution to the victims she'd defrauded. Her shell company, Vista Enclave Holdings, was liquidated. The IRS got involved naturally. Turns out tax fraud was the least of her worries. The Pine Meadow Vista subdivision. It's still there, but now it's managed by a court-appointed administrative board. No elected tyrants, no fake committees, just an accountant, a neutral lawyer, and a hotline. Sometimes the best government is the one too boring to cause damage. As for me, I still live in the house. Finished the guest cabin too. Not for Airbnb, just a quiet space for friends or the occasional guest who wants to see what it looks like when a man fights back and wins. And every so often, I get a letter. Not the HOA kind, the real kind. From people who read my story, people who stood up to their own Karen. People who, thanks to a few court filings and a guy in the mountains with a Wi-Fi signal and a grudge, decided they didn't have to surrender their home to a group of petty tyrants in blazers. Not all wars are loud. Some are fought with maps, signatures, and fake neighborhood watch vans. And sometimes, if you're lucky and stubborn and maybe a little mean, you win.